Welcome to my presentation on my article called Aiding Culturally Responsive Assessment in Schools in a Globalizing World. And this is by Nordvet et al. In 2020 for the course SED 524. And of course, my name is Allison Yar. Okay, so the purpose of this article is to address how migrant, as they phrase it in the article, or culturally diverse students experience both summative and formative assessment and how those experiences impact them. It explores how cultural dynamics affect participation and outcomes, assessment outcomes, and then it identifies barriers to culturally responsive assessment at the classroom level. And then finally, it proposes future direction for improving assessment practices in line with culturally responsive assessment, or CRA. So, with regards to methods, they state themselves that this is a state of the art literature review, which means that it focuses on recent and relevant research that allows the reader to understand the current trends. The authors use the search engine called Aurea, and then their search terms, as you can see here, include migrant, minority students, culturally responsive assessment, achievement, classroom assessment, and assessment for learning. Their sources that they compiled were 103 sources. Most of these were peer-reviewed articles with some book chapters and also 3 reports. So, of course, as we head to participants, there were no original participants, considering the fact that it was a literature review. And as mentioned before, it's a synthesis of 103 prior studies and a few other relevant literature. And then the research is mainly compiled from studies that were based in the United States, but then also Canada, Australia, and the UK, and a few studies were from European classrooms. With regards to the results, I've split this up into 2 slides so that we can go a little heavier in depth in the last portion of this slide. So one major takeaway is that summative assessment often doesn't reflect how students from different cultural backgrounds communicate or engage. So this can present itself in the use of questions that require the dominant culture context, or even cultural differences in the values in communal performance over individualistic performance. So some cultures might not value this individualistic, maybe more Northwest or North American viewpoint as with regards to assessment. And then the article presents approaches like AFL, or assessment for learning, where teachers and students share responsibility. It does mention a lot that these practices are more student-centered, of course, with the support of the teacher. And this can support culturally responsive assessment. It also lists challenges to culturally responsive assessment, and these are policy and standardization. Secondly, beliefs and conceptions of competence. Number 3, communication and participation. And number 4, background, or the student background. So I just wanted to go take a closer look at these challenges with examples as well. So with regards to policy and standardization, the curricula often reflects the dominant culture. So as I was saying, the examples being more individualistic, we need to adjust content, of course, to reflect students' lives and experiences. So we really do need to know our students in that context. Number 2 is teachers' beliefs and conceptions of competence of their students. So teachers may view migrant, again, I use migrant because that is the wording they used in the article, but culturally diverse students as less capable. These might be preconceived notions, something that we are not consciously aware of, but we need to become consciously aware of it, and then focus on the strengths and cultural awareness for our students. Communication and participation, I want to go into as well. So some students' cultural values for example, harmony, may make them less comfortable with critique or debate or that type of setting or setup in the classroom. So we need to offer varied, inclusive ways to demonstrate learning and being very considerate of the students in our classroom specifically. And then student background. Education is focused on reproducing content or education that is focused on reproducing content does not engage students in the way we might want for culturally responsive assessment. So we want to instead use student-centered and critical thinking approaches. I just wanted to take a little extra time here to go over some teacher reflection that we can do in our own classrooms before we head into more practical applications of what was learned through this article. So the questions I will just read out here: who is in my classroom and how do they prefer to communicate or show learning based on my knowledge of their various cultural backgrounds? That's very important to consider, of course, and again, specifically for our students in our class. Then what assumptions am I making about ability, language, or engagement? Where do these assumptions stem from, and how can I shift this perspective? And finally, who might this task exclude, and how can I adjust it? Then going forward, we have a few practical applications. So we want to make sure we allow multiple ways to show learning. We can do this through visual representation of knowledge, so a diagram or a poster. We can record or have students record an oral response using a classroom tablet, whether they have their own or it's a shared tablet. And then finally, present a role play or skit with a partner or group. Again, this just depends on your students and if partner might be more suitable or group might be more suitable. And then, of course, we want to do this with intention and intentional grouping. So maybe students are paired or grouped with other students that are maybe more familiar with the school language as opposed to their home language or native language, I guess you would say. And then a bonus here would be that students might be able to choose from one of the above. This, of course, is time dependent and based on the resources that the teacher has, of course. I have put in also a little link here for the UDL guide, Action and Expression, which can help in this process. Practical application number 2, we want to allow for diversity in participation. So really varying that how students can participate. We want to enable the use of Google Translate for oral and written responses or allow students to brainstorm in their native language. And then we want to allow students to make use of visual aids or acting things out. So if they're not familiar with, say, the English language as much as they are with their home language, using bodily expression can really help students express what they need to express or express their knowledge that they've learned in the classroom. And then, of course, I've also put a link here, and that is how to use Google Translate in the classroom. It also goes into a little bit more detail as to how you can use Google, other resources in Google in your classroom. So it's a very helpful link. And then we have practical application number 3. We want to try to build rubrics with students and not for students. I think this is a really interesting one and maybe one that's not utilized very frequently. We want to provide and discuss sample work, of course, to define expectations. And this is not only with what is viewed as excellent work, but also what's satisfactory work. So across the whole span, so it can be really understood what is expected of students. And then co-creation of a rubric, it would be really interesting to do, and it really gives autonomy to the students, and it maintains the student-centered learning. I've also put a link at the bottom here. This is a great link for understanding how to create a rubric with your students. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the reference of the article that I chose today. I hope you learned something, and I know I certainly did. I look forward to everyone else's presentations.